Good grief, Gunters. Welcome back to Meta Egg, where we look at the weird things that media does. Today's expert is an expert on cartoons, UFOs, conspiracy theories, and all things that are uncomfortable to talk about at the dinner table. Mr. Frank Zero.
Hello. How are you, sir?
Not bad, but we started rambling right before we did this, and that's why I started it, because I realized we were past due. So we're just gonna start going. Tell us the ballad
Of Stefan
of
von Braun?
Warner von Braun.
Okay. Um,
The tragedy of Darth Warner von Braun.
Making him like a Vader-esque character at this point. So Wernher von Braun is a really interesting cat for a number of reasons. Morally, all over the place. Scientific genius. Certainly a futurist and a space-based visionary from when he was a small child. This was the only, this was his obsession. And so he developed the V2 rocket that, leveled London in a few days and also led to the development of our rocket program and eventually our space program. We made Werner von Braun the director of NASA after he had been in the Third Reich as a high ranking official responsible for killing thousands of slave labor individuals from the different camps in order to test and fully build the V2.
Oh,
I
he was
almost said
killing.
the UFO.
So he was
So
using.
at this point, history is
I
telling
remember.
us that there's a lot of controversy with this. We don't know what's kind of been covered up or brushed away, but there are people who said they were at the camps. They saw him okay the 10 workers that were going to be hung, the 10 slowest workers from the day before were going to be hung the next morning, every day as an example, or perhaps it was every week or something. So there's some testimony that he was as evil as it gets, and some testimony that he was really a science guy. This would have been the decision of people telling him to work faster or else, and then throwing bodies at him and maybe money at him to try to fix the problem. We really don't know, again, the moral details of where he stands. But the second he's the director of NASA, second we take him over here in paperclip, I mean, he's making movies with Walt Disney about space and weather-based weaponry. There's these half cartoon infomercial kind of military industrial happy kind of 1960s, I don't know what, mini shows or documentaries, I guess would be the most valid word. So this is at a time when Walt Disney still has like a public relations. He has a relationship to the parks and the films, and he makes these appearances in these documentaries. And so, and he's supposedly a little linked up with some Nazi ideology and so forth. And then we have von Braun explaining everything from the way the V2 rocket works to the how we're going to get to the moon and so forth in these little like kid shows. So as head of NASA, he fully embraces this role. Again, he's the director for 30 years, so all kinds of things went on, which you may or may not believe are even real, that the public understands as NASA launches and different major NASA projects. When he is on his deathbed and he's on his way out, and on his tomb, he leaves what you could minimally call the average conspiracy theorist a lot to bite off and chew. On the tomb, it says, it's a Bible quote that explains that God's handiwork maketh the firmament It's some quote just kind of affirming that God's handiwork is in his work is space and the beauty of the universe, but that there is a firmament, over our Earth. And so this is where a lot of flat Earth people start to freak out because they go, wait, I already question everything NASA says. And if their director for 30 years leaves this on his tomb, is this not a major message to us or people seeking a larger truth with, NASA patches and symbolism and all kinds of stuff we've discussed before on here? Uh, you know, and that could go on for whole shows just trying to break down NASA.
The occult
But I
nature of
don't see
NASA.
him. What's that, bud?
So yeah, we could have an entire show on just like the occult nature of NASA or the
Right,
esoteric,
absolutely.
like the
But
foundation of NASA, I guess is the best
sure.
way.
But I don't see von Braun as really tied to the flat Earth theory and everything as much as he was absolutely tied in with whatever and
He
how
could be
weird NASA
saying,
got.
I
We
mean, he
know
could
from
be
his
saying that
calculations.
the firmament was like some sort of barrier,
Yeah.
as in religious texts is considered, and it's usually used by flat earthers as some way to denote like you
Well, like in
can't go
28
past this point.
ancient cultures, there's a firmament in the way that like Egypt has like Nuit, who lays across the night at night or whatever. But all the ancient cultures had some sort of cap or dome. Not all of them, but like I'm saying, some 22 ancient cultures that were prominent had like a cap or a top or a dome to the way they illustrated the way the world was laid out. And there are more exotic, weird examples like, a turtle floating in space with a
Yeah,
flat world.
I know what
But
you're talking
I'm
about.
speaking more of the just all the ancient cultures, what they offered us art wise and spirituality wise included this firmament idea. But like I was saying, I don't really want to get into that sort of thing. I think von Braun represented something about the mystery of what we still don't fully grasp about NASA and that weird ass space station and the landing on the moon and the Kubrick and the whatever else is
Right.
factually involved with that mystery.
Well, von Braun was
But
used by Kubrick. Kubrick kind of used him as like the archetype for Dr. Strangelove and how I learned to love the bomb and stop worrying or whatnot. But
I, d-
the
I-
the
wait, wait,
it
wait. Sorry, go on.
it's kind of implied. I mean, there's a stereotype of like the German rocket scientist.
Oh, right. Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
you know, he
I mean
keeps
that
doing
that
that.
definitely came from Von Braun, and you see it
Right.
reflected in Marvel and everything else.
Right.
Uh, Putting
Because I
weird
mean, there's like
stereotypes
Von Braun.
together.
NASA's got Von Braun buildings. I know that if you were
At least,
part of
yeah.
Space Force, you know who Von Braun is. Like he's like
Absolutely, yeah. You couldn't go through the doors of NASA or be an employee or whatever without hearing so much about von Braun. They're not going to tell you about his years as a leader of the SS. They will tell you everything you need to know about once he was in America and he was all denazified and smiles and living with a
smiles
bunch of his
and
friends in Mobile
hanging out with
and
Disney.
not Mobile, a part of Alabama that I always
Huntsville.
forget. Huntsville?
Yeah.
Huntsville,
I'm from
yeah.
Bama. Yeah. Yeah. Like I
That's where
said,
they
that Werner von Braun, like Huntsville is a big part of the aerospace industrial
right.
like chain of supply chain, I guess you could call it. Because
But
like a
that's
lot
where
of
they
like
put most of the
missiles.
paperclip Nazis. Like the ones
Yeah,
they
yeah,
just gave
yeah,
jobs
yeah.
that just
A
hid
lot of
in
space
some
stuff.
government agency filing shit. Those were all the people they were
So let's
located
talk
in
about
Huntsville.
his assistants, specifically Rosen, I think is what the name was.
What's that, man?
Rosen, is that the name? His
Name
secretary?
Carol Rosen. Sorry, man. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Carol
So she
Rosen.
took the data from when he was on his deathbed And he's the first person to give us a. There was all these wacky documents and weird military insiders and whatever in sort of the beginning of cumulative conspiracy theory, which was in like the 90s. This was in zines. This was in weird books you would buy. You didn't have any groups. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have any place to go and like know if there were even people out there who thought like you or whatever. But you could get into these certain groups, and within those were like the absolutely necessary books about aliens, books about banking, books about, the military industrial complex, books about the CIA, books about JFK, and things like that. And there is like these sections of conspiracy that kept themselves way, way away from the rest of conspiracy dumb. There wasn't a whole curriculum of it. There was just these isolated events that you would track through groups or whatever. And you would do the same, like I said, if you just had an interest in Mount Shasta and crystals or UFOs or, Reiki healing or whatever. They would all be the same people trying to get together and find like minds. Will, why am I explaining this?
Because I want to get to the point of what he basically said.
Oh,
There was
von
going to be
Braun
like
said on
false
his.
flag, like the whole
How did
idea
I
of like
even.
Project Bluebeam and all of
Yes.
that basically
So
has its
I was
husk.
saying this early 90s literature included a lot of stuff about this supposed Project Bluebeam, which included during the Bay of Pigs, they were seriously thinking about making Jesus appear over Cuba to have this major
Oh yeah,
religious revolution or whatever in the middle of their
like
switch.
holographic images or like
Right.
projected
The
on the
first time we would
clouds to make
project a
a
holograph and try to change the events in an isolated war with an isolated culture. And then they thought about a few other countries. They could perhaps do this kind of religious projection and mass effect to a given small populace. And then they thought, well, one day we could have the end game, which is fake a giant alien invasion with maybe our planes with some stuff glued onto them, exactly like we see in Independence Day 2, or maybe just like holograms or, people in suits. Who knows what they first thought in the 40s and 50s when they began to think these theories, and then 60s when they're able to implement them but don't yet. And then in the 90s when we start to get all the literature on what Blue Beam may have been, and maybe that project just got thrown in a trash can somewhere, but we see ultra realistic holograms now. We see holograms of whales splashing around in gyms at high
with
schools, and
just drones. I mean, like the
with
drones
yeah,
alone could
yeah, you
do
can do.
weird stuff.
Right now, we're looking at the so-called aliens who are actually robots in the Cops episode. I decided to want to show you guys aspects of. Moving
Right.
on, so von Braun had these bullet points that he said after he passed. This is basically was going to be the order as he understood it. And yes, he was high ranking in some like Masonic groups and German secret societies and this and that. He wasn't just some guy.
But the
And so,
idea is that there would be like some sort of false enemy and that it would go one after the other. There would
well, they
be
would have what he said was there'd be the Cold War, and then eventually, like, that would end almost immediately, and they would push terrorism. But when they pushed terrorism, they would push it as far as the people would go with it. So if we still believed in terrorists decades and decades later, they would still just be having proxy wars with terrorists forever. But if we ever caught on to that, then they would either try to fake an asteroid or they would try to fake
a
an
pandemic.
alien invasion. And
I
that's
thought it was
the little.
asteroid pandemic and then alien. Like they would try to
He
do the
he never
asteroid.
said pandemic.
He never,
There
because
are.
it is kind of misleading online. Some people have kind of slid pandemic in the way of
Well,
asteroid.
like a lot of descriptions of things have pandemic and major weather events and solar flare and things like this, kind of like these Gordon Michael Scallion, Edgar Casey ideas that'll never die are always in these different timelines. But I just wanted to tell the good people what this man said on his deathbed, and how we got to this Carol Rosen woman touring the country trying to tell everyone that
Right.
the last flag is the last bullet item is
So
that
so here's my theory on cops, because basically that's the story of this episode, which is called what is it?
little big green men, little
The
green big
case
men.
of the big little green men. Yeah.
There you are.
Reed Shelley. Anyways, okay, so they have a moon rock or a Martian gemstone is coming down, and another shuttle sequence, and all of the cartoons that we've talked about have shuttle sequences.
Everyone
So
can't get away from it.
the Martian gemstone is first stolen by Big Boss and his crew, and then when the cops recover it, this guy right here, Dr. Bad Vibes. Now, this is my theory, right? Dr. Bad Vibes comes up with the whole alien idea. Yo, we got these alien latex things. We could, like, trust me. We'll ask for the gemstone back. We'll take control over the whole city. Is basically the idea.
Sure.
I think that the Bad Vibes guy was kind of as a villain, he was inspired by a Nazi mad scientist. And even though he doesn't speak with the mad
Redneck.
scientist like the German accent, I think that he's a stand-in. I think he's an analog for Wernher von Braun. That's my idea, because and
No, I get you there.
I think the writer, whoever this dude is, I think he would know, because I think it's kind of a goofball like nod for a
We're gonna
kid's
go
story
through
like
enough cartoons that you'll see actual direct Werner von Braun characters.
right.
Like it's in the Buzz Lightyear show, I want to say. Trust me,
Yes.
I
I
almost
think
remember
Mr. Animus.
exactly which ones have the Von Braun impressions. There might even be a Super Mario World because there's so many of those episodes. But that's for another day, friends. We'll find the Von Braun impersonators throughout the cartoons.
Well, see, we've already had like one. This is the G.I. Joe episode right here that we looked back in episode 2, where they do the exact same thing that they do on the cops, where the
Yeah,
aliens are actually individuals dressed up, and they notice the milk. So that
right.
the Cobra is using the same idea of faking UFO to basically take control over the situation and make the world's governments do what they want them to do.
The false flag alien invasion.
Right.
This will be the subject of many, many cartoons. So we have this episode where we're bringing you a bunch of cartoons where that theme lines up, but
It
this
gets
is one
creepy,
of
man. It
the
gets creepy to
dominant
the point of like it's
themes in all
programming.
cartoons from the 80s and 90s. Yeah, no, no, no. That's my point. With both mind control and like sort of sexual. David Wise. So David Wise wrote the Kublai Khan Pyramid episode for Star Trek Animated when he was 13, and then later wrote this season of the False Flag Alien Invasion in Ninja Turtles and worked on many, many other shows. I interviewed him as well as many of the other writers that worked around
Wow.
this
When he
time.
was 13, he did the Jim Shooter route. That's cool. So, I mean, is that just because it's like easy to do? Like you introduce the alien invasion and kids are going to watch, but
Yeah.
it feels like programming. It feels
Yeah.
like they're getting you used to the idea, like
But when you look at them
even
one next
referencing
to the
Von Braun.
other, uh, I'm trying to think. Yeah, like the beginning of Galaxy Rangers, where they're explaining that aliens needed gold to power their monatomic gold or whatever to power the engine of their ship. It just reminded me of the inside of Dreg ship. I mean, the similarities are so. Like I was beginning to say, if you watch them back to back, just the scenes, kind of like we're presenting for everyone, it's alarming. But like I'm saying, it is about all of these themes. So, the people out there could pick another, and we could show them many, many examples of of that lined up. Though I'm glad we got the World Trade Center and the alien stuff sort of out of the way, or we at least majorly started it, because that takes up so much of the content. I mean, that those are the largest nodes of connection, and
Yeah,
then
and
we can
we're
move
I
down.
mean, we're kind of we're showing more than 3, but we're
Oh
basically
yeah, you're
sticking
right.
to the idea of 3.
You're right.
But really you can some of these it's kind of like a Venn diagram. Like this kind of fits into the episode we did that's called like Ancient Aliens Are a PSYOP. I mean, it's the same, they fit into the same category with just slight variations on why the false flag is happening, whether it's
Right.
done to cover up a like to soft disclose, or whether or not it's to take control over, it's the military's attempt to take control, or for some crime syndicate to take control. The weird thing about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ones, you mentioned Drag, and Drag is this guy right here at the very beginning. He is he from Dimension X? He's an
Yeah.
alien. Okay, yeah, he's an alien who's basically trying to use aliens, and this specific episode, the idea of aliens, he goes to Congress with and says, we need to have weapons out in space, which again is something that Wernher von Braun was working on. And Rosin mentions often enough, because von Braun didn't think that he did not want weapons in space. Von
Yeah.
Braun were a bad idea. He thought they cost too much. He thought that they would cost too many lives. There was all these reasons. So that's why von Braun was speaking out against like the deceptions, to basically put weapons in space
Also,
for
his calculations said we couldn't get to the moon.
yeah, I know. When we were talking about the fake moon landing stuff,
Yeah.
because there's a James Bond, we might have already talked about it. There's a James Bond movie. It's the one that takes place in Vegas. It's called Diamonds Are Forever.
Yeah.
And he runs in one spot of that show and runs through a sound stage of a bunch of astronauts faking being on the moon. And there's like a German scientist who's speaking with an accent. But anyways, like through like the legend of conspiracy theory, von Braun being hooked with that whole moon landing fakery, it's just, it's fascinating, bro. It's fascinating.
Yeah. It's weird to look at the only person from Project Paperclip that became like a celebrity and a necessary part of American culture. There's everyone else with Paperclip except for maybe 3 or 4 rocket scientists and a few physicists or something were just kind of secreted away in Huntsville or elsewhere. Uh, but yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about Tony J. Is that cool now, or should we wait till
Oh
later?
yeah, we can do actually here. I have a little overlay because what we're viewing in the background goes along with this. This is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles season 9. Tony plays Dredge, who is the alien that we're showing right here, in
Yeah.
which Dredge pulls of or Wernher von Braun and gets them to shove weapons into space that he can use against
And he offers to bring like
Earth.
water cleaning technologies, and he uses this sci-fi trope of the aliens give us good things like in V and
Yeah,
childhood and everyone's content with the technology, whatever they've given us, and then it's actually
and then
some
the Jack
form
in
of
the Box.
infiltration or invasion or whatever. So the man you're looking at is Tony J, as we mentioned. And in this show, as Will mentioned, he plays Dreg, the main alien, and in Steven Spielberg's Invasion America series, he plays Dragut, and he's the leader of the alien invaders in that series as well, which also has Leonard Nimoy as a voice. He's so commonly paranormal or supernatural gods or supreme beings, which is actually his name in a movie role, I believe. But he's
Time
Anubis
Bandit.
and Gargoyles, Galactus and Fantastic Four, an Egyptian priest in Pinky and the Brain, the Game Master in Jumanji, the Golden Skull and Skeleton Warriors, Overlord or Mind Warp in Savage Dragon, Grim Reaper and Darkwing Duck, Merlin in the Smurfs, Megabyte in Reboot, Guardian in Sonic, and Dr. Animus in Buzz Lightyear, the Yeti in Captain Planet, Dormammu from the Spider-Man 90s series, and a bunch you guys don't care about. The Elder God from Legacy of Kain. The Supreme Being was actually a reference to the film Time Bandits. He was a magic mirror in two completely unrelated different things. So he's a magic mirror in Divine Fantalusion. He's a magic mirror in House of Mouse, and he's a mirror in Phantasmic, and he's Wernher von Braun in Lloyd in Space. Uh,
I couldn't find very much on Lloyd in Space, but the Von
Virgil
Braun
from Mighty Max.
Buzz
No, I
Lightyear.
saw that, but it just like I tracked it down and watched it at the time. But the fact that I forgot about it and we got into this Von Braun kick, and I'd forgotten just long enough to be reading that list and then hit Von Braun, that blew my mind for a minute. But Virgil,
Yeah.
he's also Virgil in Mighty Max. I just wanted to finish the list of
What
weird
what is the
gods.
thing with Mighty Max? Who is Virgil in Mighty Max? I mean,
Oh,
I saw he was Metabyte too, which I remember that one. It has
yeah,
to
from
do with his
Reboot.
voice, right? It has
What's
to
that,
do
buddy?
with his supreme being type voice.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Wait, what was your first question? I was hopping on that. And then,
Um I was just mentioning that the Buzz Lightyear Dr. Animus
yes,
is like there it's basically a direct reference because the part of Space Command are all of these individuals who are basically like stand-ins for the US's Space Force, so to say, right? And one of
sure.
them is this thick German accent, like they if you look it up, it basically says it sounds like they're using the trope of the psychiatrist, like the German psychiatrist, but they're talking about like rockets and stuff. So it's
Right.
Werder von Braun. But
Sure.
the most interesting about Tony J though is the invasion in America and the TMT. So the whole TMNT season 9 is basically false flag alien invasion. Like the whole season. We just looked at one episode, but the whole
Yeah.
season about that. And then you
Right.
have Invasion in America, which again, Steven Spielberg's depiction of a soft alien disclosure. And the individual Tony J plays basically the same role with the exact same name in each.
Right. It's absurd, man. And he plays many more roles, like in Extreme Ghostbusters and Felix and stuff like that. They just weren't really resonant roles to this obvious theme of being like Egyptian gods and whatever a game master is, he's every version of a game master.
Right. And again, it has to do with his voice, of course,
Yeah.
but the way that it gets specific between certain content, like when the ideas kind of carry on and they kind of like group and coalesce together. And so he kind of represents that idea of the floating mirror head,
Yeah.
beyonder. I guess the way that I like explain it to myself is the idea that Marvel has called the beyonder,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah. But
this.
imagine looking at your IMDb, looking at your own, and going, I played a magic mirror twice and then a mirror once. There's enough roles in the universe and enough actors, but somehow I was chosen for a mirror 3 times. It's just bizarre. But the Dormammu Spidey thing always freaks me out because we know that's the NASA connection in Spider-Woman.
Right. It's not, although he was around at that time. I mean, Tony J has been doing movies.
Yeah.
We're focusing more on his voice acting, but the
Yeah, yeah.
guy's basically an accomplished actor as well. And
Sure.
so all of those things kind of add up together.
Yeah. No offense, Tony J, if you're still around. I didn't mean to
06. He died in 06.
no,
He
that's
had,
unfortunate.
yeah, they removed, like, if I remember correctly, just so for the sake of research, he had like a non-malignant tumor removed from his lung, and he never they sent him home after surgery, and he became critical, died shortly after.
Man. Well, he's got enough of himself recorded. I mean, he has enough of himself that will live on. That was all almost going to be an awful way to say that.
I don't know. You know, it's weird, man. I don't know how much you pay attention to Rogan. I pay attention to what's going on Joe Rogan for the
I
sake
watch
of,
enough
like,
Rogies. I'm with Rogies most of the time.
well, I feel like it's a good
Uncle
pull
Rogies.
from where the mainstream conspiracy theory head is at, and it's also kind of part of, like, you can tell since he's got such a huge listenership that there's an influence to certain topics, right? But this idea on his show of ancient aliens and Ezekiel being some sort of UFO, and perhaps like God is an alien and has planted us. I mean, it's going strong week after week right now. And
I
then
mean, he just had Billy Carson on.
yeah, of course.
That's the
That's all
homie,
they
man.
talked about. That's all they talked about. It's
That
been
is
kind
the
of
homie.
ramping up. I mean, what do you feel about that? I mean, like, not to say that there's any reason to trust Rogan or any such thing. I'm just saying, like, it's becoming a main consensus idea. Uh, and in a way, we kind of have to be a little bit, like, fearful that maybe it was implanted from all of our childhood, luxuries growing up in the 80s and 90s. But
Right. Uh, I uh, I trust Uncle Rogies more than most. I think that people make these arguments like when you just look at how much money he makes, you're automatically under the influence of so many companies and movers and shakers that you can no longer be yourself, and you no longer know the line between all the people you got to call to get things approved, to say, to do some ad agency, to do this, to do that. And you couldn't possibly at the end of the day be a well-rounded, genuine, well-disciplined person who can still produce rather stimulating intellectual content with such a broad variety of guests and topics. So I really, respect what he does. I don't mean to sound like, I don't know, the internet's gonna hate me for this either way, but I
the
don't. I
internet already
like
hates
the
you.
way that it goes from one episode, it's just a passionate dude jack off about how great hunting is. Next episode, he's talking to some formal lady that's in some company, some tech company, and he read up just a little bit, but he can keep a good conversation up for the novice listener to kind of understand why her company is interesting, why she's really cool. Next episode, four drunk guys jacking off each other about MMA. Next episode, a mix of two people debating some topic we're all curious about in some way or another. Next topic, just some totally unexpected freak who wrote 3 books on mollusk shells or something, and that teaches us something about evolution. And Joe just got Jamie to read a thing, and he read it to him, and then the show. uh, I just like how well-rounded it is in general, and I guess I'll stop there, and I don't feel like I'm listening to someone who's pressuring me into anything
Well,
about this new
regardless,
world
it's
or this new culture or any
right.
kind of mental space that I really would like to be in.
Well, it's making an influence regardless. I just think it's like where everybody, like, it's setting up the perfect idea of having some sort of project blue beam like false religious event or false spiritual event somehow. With I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just paranoid. I just feel like it's on. People are starting to pay a lot more attention to religious text. People are starting to talk a lot more about religion in like the term of technology, and that's basically what has grown from the Wernher von Braun like confessions into what we scoff at, which is like Project Bluebeam. Well, and I don't know. I just can't I can't draw the line between entertainment. I mean, where is it entertainment and when is it like it feels creepy that somebody's trying to make me think things are a certain way that they're not, like
I mean, you gotta when this whole you can ask yourself that like over and over, or fall into a bit of a trap of like keep reverting to this has got to just be some artists and some writers and they just came up with some stuff and it happens to be a thing, and then it's like, no, you're in fucking denial because you study this topic, you watch these cartoons all the time or whatever. You know that these themes are ingrained in there, and just because no one's been able to come out and tell you, yes, we were brainwashing children, I
we were
shouldn't
brainwashing
stop
them.
what I'm doing and just say, maybe it was just a coincidence every time in all those seasons with all
It's
those
not a
writers.
cool. I mean, it gets a little
Um,
bit overstrung. It's
right.
overdone. First
Yeah.
off, even if it is just a coincidence, it's overdone.
So then you start going, well, what's the motivation? And then you start going, well, like, how much, like, before cell phones were advertisers in the military industrial complex and the educational system and all that way, way up in my shit? And then how much post cell phones and modern technology or whatever are all those institutions all up in your shit? And then you can start discerning A, how much reality might be what consensus reality is discussed as, B, what, like, if everything is some type of propaganda from the government or the military or something like that, what is the motivation for a given psychological operation? And then what and how does it affect the target? So if the target's a bunch of little kids sitting around in the 80s watching Ninja Turtles, kind of a universal show that every demographic of child would enjoy, what is, like, okay, how do you
What is
get
the end?
something?
Like, how effective were they? Is basically what you're getting at. Like,
Well, yeah, but like, how can you take something like two best friends garage black and white comic idea and go, we, through the power of action figures and advertising, can make this a colorful, multi-million dollar thing. Just trust us with some stuff, and then that stuff, just like a record label or whatever, starts to become more and more annoying, and it starts to become actually what we were thinking you could do, or actually we were wishing this album sounded like, or well, for this season we fired all these people and we really think we should move in a new direction. And that's always the curve toward, like, um a controlled operation or a controlled means to an end, whatever. But you can still look at, like you're saying, how the target is affected, like how effective was the attempt to reprogram the same concepts over and over. And if you've really done well, have any of those concepts made it to the conscious of these people who watch these cartoons? Has anybody from the 80s and 90s all of a sudden woke up and gone, holy shit, all the cartoons from when I was a kid told me about 9/11? Like, no one had a revelation. It stayed in the unconscious. They can tell you
that's
the
a
Ninja
good
Turtles
point.
go bang boo and they got these ninja things. And they can tell you G.I. Joe went bang bloop and they got these guns and this guy's name is this, because they remember the action figures, the merchandising, the things that were burnt in their mind to tell their parents to spend money on. but they did not get the Black Pyramids floating around, and they did not get the aliens who take off Osama bin Laden mask to reveal other human mask and etc.
Huh. That's a good point. So I don't know. Still left with mere entertainment then.
True.
So what do you
Well,
think? Do you think
entertainment
that
and
are we going to
sales.
have a false flag event? I mean, in the same way that we see a whole bunch of in the same way we see a whole bunch of material about 9/11 before 9/11 happens. You can go
Yeah.
back and you watch our first show. So, is it stand to reason that there's so much material about a false flag alien invasion that it stands to reason that it's not only possible but probable?
I mean, decades after this, they make a live action V and they make a live action Childhood's End. And
Yes.
those both have this they're coming down to save us, but they're actually infiltrating us to take over all of us vibe. And so I'm saying some 10, 12, 15 years after these shows insisted on every channel that these false flag and alien blue beam projects were going to happen, then why decades later still churn out more content for the young people of that generation or just a decade later or whatever to just the whole show is the same thing. They're going to infiltrate with this guy, and this guy's more visionary and has connection to maybe the ones that are good, and there's going to be humans who resist, and they'll be in this group that'll let you be infiltrated by the shapeshifters and the blah, blah, blah. And so they keep the message going. Like, I don't know, man. It was 4 or 5 weeks ago. They had Francis Ford Coppola, excuse me, a oh my God, like one of my favorite directors. I
Get in the
can't.
body, Frank. In the body.
Wait, who's the director of Everything Great, Mean Streets? Scorsese.
Boom.
Uh,
There you go.
So there's a commercial where Scorsese is stuck in traffic in an alien invasion. Then in that same round of commercials, like the
Oh,
same week, Reeboks was running a thing that was like, if you're not human and you're running at night and they come to abduct you or they come to get you, and it was like a clear abduction kind of or UFO running person at night kind of thing. I can't remember which it pans out to be. And then there's another mass invasion, unrelated goofy commercial without celebrities. And so what is that? Why are they continuing that if not to one day trigger something in the unconscious or the conscious to be ready for some event? What I think happened was they had a bunch of different buttons, like we could all nuke each other, or we could do the false alien invasion, we could do this, we could do that. But they and everyone who in the 90s and 80s and whatever who was like clairvoyant and visionary all saw a real future that took place, and that statistically would have been one of these things we've always thought it's been, but something changed
hmm.
and nobody knows how to reckon with that, so we're all still stuck on uh we should buy more gold. No, 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 no. We should get the electric car. No, the not electric car. We should get the guns. No, don't get the gun. We're all still waiting. Is it going to be a chemical attack? What if they are shape-shifting reptilians from underground? And then it's going to be weather. It's nothing fun's going to happen. It's going to be weather. It's going to be a virus. They leave us in that whirlpool of
Yeah.
concern. So,
Yeah. I mean, you have to have an antagonist or you don't have a story, right?
what's that, buddy? I'm
So
sorry.
it said you have to have an antagonist or you don't have a story. Without an
True.
antagonist, there's no narrative.
True, Chains.
Tell me more about Invasion America, because I only really kind of like looked at one episode, but it seems to be pretty like episodic. It looks like a
I got a lot.
saga.
It's good, man. Like when I watched it as an adult for the first time, like I say adult. When I went back when I was like 18 to 20, definitely when I was 20 to
Yeah.
22 and writing the sync chapter and stuff, I went back and watched it for the first time and I was like, this was really good. Like I remember that it was dark and I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and I remember that it was a Steven Spielberg project. But no, I didn't remember that. I went back and watched it and I was like, this is quality. And then I was like, oh, it was actually a Spielberg. This was taken but in animated form for him. And you could do lots of things you couldn't even do with a film or a non-animated show with this. So, and what I mean by that is like there's a whole race of aliens and their ships, and there's good guy aliens and bad guy aliens. They all have different ships that battle like Star Wars, but then a lot of it is shot in Earth, drawn on Earth, however you want to put that, drawn of Earth. And so they have this tale of like these star seeds or these people born on Earth who were half alien and have the special gifts of the alien genetics or whatever. And then
Okay.
there's these ancestors coming back to Earth. I forgot why they were coming back, but these bad guys are coming regardless to try to invade Earth. And the government already has, like all contactees and abductees say, the government has the agreement with the bad aliens, not the positive light aliens or whatever. I forget if it's exactly divided like that, but the government is with the aliens on one side and the public doesn't know, and then you have secret operations taking place or whatever. So you get like a little bit of like the 90s contactee UFO field. You get a little bit of X-Files. Well, a lot of bit of X-Files. You get
Yeah.
a big visual recognizer. You get a good, how do you say, reminder of Roswell myths and legends and whatever. The Roswell cartoon is drawn similar to this, and you'll be really confused if you watch the Roswell cartoon or this, and then you watch the seasons of Ninja Turtles about like Area 51 and the Greys running around with the Men in Black or whatever, and you won't know what was what. Like there's these episodes with helicopters going through like the Roswell sort of area, like Mexico sort of area, and these
Well, it
Greys
says
running around.
Utah, but it's supposed to give that whole
But it's
Devil's
like the
Tower
S2.
feel.
Yeah, I realize it's in Utah, and we have many places like this as secret military facilities
Right.
across the
Right.
country and world. However, it is trying to directly reference an Area 51, either somewhere they gifted us with technology, somewhere they honestly crashed, or somewhere we do crazy stuff.
Right.
What was your boy saying, man? I was on about that thing. I would be like, I forgot what I was saying.
What?
Nothing. I
What
just
just
forgot
happened,
where
Frank? I
I
was
forgot
about to
my
start
place.
freestyling.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. I just lost my place verbally and beats.
um so there's one cartoon that didn't make the cut. I think that you were talking to me about Men in
Men in
Black.
Black. Yeah, Men in Black. At the UN, they have a holographic false flag alien invasion business happening. And if you worked on the Men in Black cartoon, you had to have a security clearance from Lockheed. You worked in a Lockheed facility every day when you went to draw your kid's cartoon. And so that tells you,
That's kind of a jacked up idea though, because the whole thing in like Men in Black is that the truth is being told in the tabloids,
yeah,
but then if you add this layer of not only is the truth being told in the cartoons, it's being told by the Men in Black, like like the Men in Black are the ones who are putting out the stuff that says that don't believe them, you know?
oh yeah, that would be genius.
It's
No,
just
but
smart.
they actually do have a security clearance. I mean, they all had to have a security
Right.
clearance to
You're
work on it.
specifically talking about the testimony of Eddie Lynn.
What if I was?
Who is part of our community and is
total buddy.
animator. We know he's an animator, and when we talked to him about Men in Black, he said he had to have an ID to get into a Lockheed facility. So
to make the
if you
cartoon.
trust Eddie Lynn, then you
Hey,
trust that information. I do. I kind of trust Eddie Lynn. I'm just,
he's the
but I
homie,
mean,
man.
for you and we get that we know
I've
where that
only had
information.
like constructive conversations with him, and I think he thinks or something a lot like me. But maybe that's just the weird thing you do when you talk to people online. You're like, they're my mirror. Uh, but maybe it's brain problems. But
Maybe it's brain problem.
my brain's broke. Um,
So what are we gonna do next, man? That's I guess where I was
uh,
going with that. Like we're
let
talking
me
about.
check the dangulator, which is the list of very important items. Uh, okay, so we could do like the psychic kids, the implanted microchips or false memories kind of thing. We could do the psychic kids of the mind control. Let's do mind control in general, and then we could do the psychic kids. We can do the lost guy talking in numbers in GI Joe, and we can do the lost scientist guy, and then we can do the psychic children and defenders of the earth, and the psychic children in GI Joe. Or
Perfect.
we could do like six other categories, whatever the hell you want to do. This is
You'll change it anyways. You'll probably change it anyways.
yes, I will. No, I really don't know this time because we got through all the stuff I wanted to do first, definitely.
Is there anything that
And
you want to read
bro,
at
you
all?
gotta check out Mask, man. People at home, you gotta
Oh,
check out MASK, like the '80s show, just like Cops C.O.P.S. Mask is like every single episode is about some ancient myth or treasure or Nazi doomsday device. In one of them, levitating stones, space shuttles, the Nazca lines, Oz effect, reptilians, Book of Power, alien spacecraft. These are just like one word summaries of episodes: El Dorado, the Golden Scarab, Sunhenge. See what they're doing there? Underground civilization, Tokyo floods via some machine or something. The villains, EMP blast, crystal skulls. Mask has got it all for you, kids.
I had the
I'd like to do
57
shows we
Chevy
haven't
Max.
actually shown. Like for instance, I'd like to get uh if it's not Mighty Max, and it's not the Max. Oh, Pirates of Dark Water up in this
Oh,
piece. And I'd like to get like a couple other shows we just haven't shown or discussed one thing about, just because there are so many. But yeah, for the next one, we're probably just safe coming in at Mind Control. And if you kids out there are interested in stuff like this, I tried to talk to Chris Claremont for a second, and that did not go well. But you guys should look up, like, just Google Chris Claremont Mind Control, and you're gonna find this website immediately that just went through every Claremont issue, excuse me, of all of the X-Men, X-Force, Excalibur, X-Factor, all of the Avengers West Coast, everything Claremont has written, but certainly all of the X-Men and the Marvel books that you would be familiar with or would have read in the past, and just lays out the preposterous frequency with which an entire issue is about a type of mind control, and you can break them down into like 10 categories in Claremont's tradition. But it's mind blowing because it's like, how do you even get away with doing that always and forever? Uh,
well, I mean, from what I've been listening to a lot of interviews of people around Claremont lately, and just
around what?
talking that he was around Claremont, like the
Oh
individuals
gosh.
who worked with him,
Uh-huh.
talking about and trying to like learn what his techniques and stuff. And he was like a very independent person. Like when people would come up with an idea, he would basically be like, uh, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't say anything else. Don't say no more. Say no more. I'll
Right,
take
right.
the idea. I'll do something with the idea. Like, he didn't want very much influence, which I
Yeah.
find interesting. Like, he wanted it to be his world and his
He's a little bit
world.
of a control, a little bit of a control, a little bit of a control freak. No, but if it's interesting because on the website when they break down the types of mind control, they just have like female bondage, female hypnosis, and that's like a whole section throughout the website. There's actually written that many stories with, like there's the categories are just like kids hypnotized, kids drugged, kids mind controlled, and woman mind controlled into, and then you go back to his first stories and you go back to the stories he wrote a few years ago, and it's just over and over with mind control device. One or more devices used to control people throughout the issue, like, whole category.
Wow. Okay, so mind control. That's where we're headed next.
If that gives us any internal knowledge about who the man really is. Yes, mind control. That's what we shall do next, friend. And oh yeah, I ran past some street sharks with mind control. I'll get you the 3.
Cool, cool. For everybody who's watching and who's in the chat room, thank you guys so much for participation.
Yes, we appreciate it. We appreciate doing the show.
Did you see?
Thank
Did
you,
you see what?
Wayne.
Yeah, will you see what Wayne said? Keep doing this. I'll tune in every week. This guy
That's
right
what I was thinking
here,
of for.
Gillian Seed 83. This guy started commenting on some of our old shows this morning. He was like, "Oh, holy crap! I didn't even know this existed," and he was praising Andreas Zertas for showing him where we were. And for anyone who's coming from that direction, thank you guys. We'll probably be talking to them a little bit more in the upcoming weeks. I think I got a show with Andreas. I got a show with David coming in like 2 weeks. Probably another show next week with Frank, and another show with Star Wars Santa, depending on if I even care to watch The Acolyte or not. So far, I care to watch it. That might change.
Are even the fighting scenes cool?
The fighting scenes are dope.
Okay.
The fighting scenes are dope. Even there's certain parts of the thing that I'm okay with. I think that like the more you watch it, the more you get okay with the things that you didn't like, because I've seen it multiple times and I'm like, that makeup looks shitty at first, and now I'm looking at it and I'm cool with it because I know where that species comes from. You get what I'm saying? The
Yeah.
problem is that it's TV, and Star Wars didn't always used to be TV. Star Wars used to be a higher quality than everything, and now we're looking at it and we're like, it looks like Star Trek, or it looks like Rinky Dink. But
Rinky Pink? What are you saying?
Rinky Dink. Have you ever heard that
Rinky Dink.
phrase?
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah.
I know the term.
Yes, I know the term well.
To be dinky with one's rink. Yes.
To be rinky with the dink.
To travel rinkety with one's dink. Alright, it's over. The joke's over. Yes, stop. Yes, stop.
Oh, damn it. I mean, I like overall, and like, I liked doing these shows. I was really cool. It was cool to see. We didn't talk about it, but one of my favorite comic book artists named Bart Sears is tightly wound with the C.O.P.S. And I got to admit, man, going back and watching C.O.P.S was like a good feeling for me. Like there's
Yeah.
no, that's the weird thing is you go back and you watch these cartoons and they give you the same feeling as they gave you as a kid. And you kind
Well,
of
they
feel a
give you
little
the same
guilty about it.
feeling,
Like,
and you get memories back from when you were a kid because you
right.
naturally just associated a given part or a given look of a character or something with something from your childhood. You naturally hear a parent or a brother's or a early pet or something, or you daydream about some day you had when you were a kid or whatever. It really does, even if you're not looking to go down memory lane, kind of bring you back to the general feeling of like that decade and the
Right.
vibe that was
What you
alive.
were worried about, what your ideas of the future were that decade, what was
But do you
possible.
Do you feel that before cell phone
No, see,
feeling
that's the
about the
thing. It's like none of this stuff
mystery?
would work before
Uh,
cell phones
I just
because
mean
there's
like
like a
the
totally different
feeling.
idea of what we're scared about, of what we have to do to get around. Like when this UFO came down and it was in the time of the cell phones, the response wouldn't have been the same. Like think of every
Yeah,
horror movie in the 80s. Every single one you've ever seen, the whole rules of the game change if you have a cell phone. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
if
yeah, yeah.
Jason, or it doesn't matter who you're
But
dealing
do
with.
you like do you have that feeling like there's a slight emotional connection between all the people you know and events and the feeling of the day?
Yeah,
Whereas
there's like
now
a there's
that
like a
almost feels like a empty waiting room or so. Like there's no longer the feeling that there's like grand mystery beyond what you physically have gone to and seen with your own eyes and known or whatever. And you learn about
yeah,
all kind of cool stuff around the world from TV and documentaries and stuff. We weren't ignorant, like we didn't have no data coming in. We just had the data at a rate where it wasn't allowed to come with us everywhere. And then other people weren't allowed to constantly engage us in any moment. We had a moment
right.
designated for picking up
I
the
think
phone and
Chris
calling
Knowles
someone.
called it an inoculation against boredom. Because I mean
Yeah,
that's basically what it does, but it also keys down on what you can think is possible. I think that there's like a lot of that, and the storytelling before the cell phone, like
yeah.
there's certain things that you could get away with that you can't get away with anymore.
Of course, yeah, yeah.
But what's interesting,
I'm
I
always
got
trying
a
to
whole look.
explore.
I got a conspiracy theory about cops. I think cops. I think bulletproof here. Bulletproof is a
Yeah,
black Superman. I think Big Boss Man is totally, totally, totally lifted from Kingpin.
yeah.
And then, of
But now
course,
he's like
Mr. Bad
Italian.
Vibes, Dr. Bad Vibes is Werner von Braun. That's my,
Yeah.
that's my.
No, I think you're pretty right on those.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks everyone for contributing. Hit the like button, please, for the love of Pete. Go ahead and subscribe. We need subscribers. We get to community standards. If we can get to 500, let's try to get to 500. We're really close. We're almost at 400. But everybody else, look forward to things coming out soon. Hit that bell so you know when it happens. And Frank, is there anything else you would like to leave them with?
Yeah, I'd like to plug my